We are Muskegon County at Work, spotlighting workers of local governments throughout our county, revealing what it takes to make our communities comfortable and safe. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Muskegon County Municipalities at Work. Your host here, DJ Hilson, where we get to explore the different facets and avenues of local government, and more importantly, the people that make those engines go. Today, I have the privilege and honor of talking to Amy Campanelli, who is the Chief Public Defender, Director of the Public Defender's Office here in Muskegon County. Amy, how are you today?
Hi, DJ. Thanks for having me on. I'm great today.
It's great to have you. I always like to have my guests start with talk a little bit about yourself, who you are, kind of your background, and what brought you here to Muskegon.
So I'm an Illinois native. I grew up in Illinois. However, my mother and 5 siblings ahead of me were all born in Michigan. I had a very fondness for Michigan. We would vacation here often on the east side because my mother grew up and my siblings lived near Detroit. And I have a lot of cousins here and other family members and things. So always had a fondness for Michigan. But my career and where I went to school, University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, law school in the city of Chicago at Chicago-Kent. And I became a public defender. I thought I was going to be some sort of international lawyer. I lived in France for a little while. I spoke French. But then I sort of was hooked in as an intern at the public defender's office. And I really wanted to be a trial lawyer. Being a public defender, you're in trial, you're in court all day doing trials. And it was the love that I followed through my passion throughout my life. So I was in Illinois as a public defender. I did do a little private practice for a little while. And then I became the head of the public defender's office in Cook County. That was a wonderful experience. It was a very interesting time to be the public defender from 2015 to 2021. It was the height of George Floyd and all the cases that came before that, and COVID. So a lot of interesting things happened when I was public defender. It was a really nice time to make some great criminal reforms in Chicago and Illinois. And then I worked at a nonprofit for a little bit in a community that was very high in violence. And we represented young men, mostly young men under 25, who were charged with, gun cases and violent crimes in the city of North Lawndale. And I loved that work. I loved being in the community on a residential street, meeting the people that lived in that community, worshiped in that community, loved that community, and wanted to make it a safe community. So after that, I took a little break, and then I saw this opening in Muskegon. I read about what they were doing in the public defender's office. I loved the mission of being very holistic, representing clients well beyond the courtroom, looking at their troubles, what brought them into the system, how can we help them? Because I've always had an idea that public defenders are part of the solution to the problem of violence and crime and substance abuse and mental health issues, that we can be part of the solution. To me, success as a director or a chief or just as a young lawyer is to have less cases, right? Less clients. Think of solutions before someone comes and needs my services or after they leave the courthouse. What can we do for them? I'm also married. I've been married for 35 years. I have 3 children. They're all grown. They're all over the country. And so that's Amy Campanelli.
Well, so there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
Having been here when the idea of bringing the public defender's office in-house to the county, and then how it has expanded since that initial move. I'll say this, that I was one of the, I won't say few, but there are some, worried about what happens when you bring it in-house. But I actually welcome that because I believe in a good, strong system where everyone is well represented and it's a fair playing field. A huge fan of that. So let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned holistic. What is it at the Public Defender's Office here in Muskegon County that offers that ability to fulfill that mission of holistic approach?
Well, I think it starts with me always stressing to the staff, every person who works in my office, not just the attorneys, we have social workers on staff, investigators, and all the support staff that help us do our job every day. It starts with talking to them about we represent clients. We are here for clients. When you step into the office every day, you should be thinking about, how can I better represent a client? How can I help a client, whether it's answering a phone, helping a family member who is, worried about their loved one in jail, working with community members about getting our clients linked to services in the community, whether that's mental health or substance abuse, and of course the lawyers, looking beyond the case with the help of our holistic social work team. We have several mitigation specialists and social workers who work with the attorneys, talk to the clients, meet with the clients, get their story, right? Who is this human being that came to us with obviously something happened, some bad behavior usually that brought them to us, sometimes not. We're here to protect the innocent as well, and let's not forget that. There are innocent people who are charged with crimes. And they are to put that story together, whether it's for you, DJ, as the head prosecutor, tell you a little bit about this client, the judge, anyone who will listen, that here's a human being. You don't have to send him to jail. You don't have to send this person to prison, and here's why. There's a better option for this case and this client. And quite frankly, people forget that when someone goes to jail or someone is, locked up in prison, it doesn't just affect that person, right? It affects their family and their entire community. So we can do better. We can do better the way we do things in the criminal system. And that's what I think about holistic. I think thinking about the client as a human being, as a whole person. They didn't just get born and say, gee, when I grow up, I want to be a criminal, or I want to have a substance abuse problem. I want to, break into people's, whatever it is, that happens over time. And why did that happen? And I'm not saying people shouldn't be held accountable. I do believe in accountability and that my clients should be held accountable, but there's different ways that accountability could, be impacted and how we can deal with these clients. And because it does affect the community. It really, really does. And I think I've talked to you, DJ, many times about this, that you are in the community, you believe the same things, that if we can, we want to help people instead of just punish them. We want to try and rehabilitate people.
Well, let's work off of that idea of rehabilitation. And you'll have to remind me, when you were in Cook County, I think we've had this conversation about the alternative sentencing courts, the recovery court, mental health court, veterans treatment court, the things that we have here to offer in Muskegon County. From the public defender side of things, how have you seen, those benefit your clients and the community?
There's no question that I call them therapeutic courts. They are wonderful. They help people get on the right track. I mean, the person has to be willing and work hard to get through those programs, whether it's your recovery court or your mental health court or your veterans court. They work. I helped start the very first mental health court in Cook County in the early 2000s, and it was amazing what all the stakeholders and service providers and law enforcement could do together. And we sat at the table, quite frankly, for 2 years planning that court to make sure we got it right. In where I come from, right, in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, everybody was just, you went to trial or you pled guilty and you were sent to prison or you got probation. There wasn't this idea that we can go beyond that we can really think outside the box. And when we started these therapeutic courts, the first court, I believe, was in Miami in 1994. It was a drug court. And then we had our first drug court in 98 and then the mental health court in 2003. And working with the judiciary and the prosecutors and, like I said, all the community service providers, clients suffering from mental health issues need to be treated differently. And they have to be, I'm not a professional mental health licensed counselor. My daughter is, which is wonderful. But there are professionals out there who know how to deal with these issues and get people to continue on their path to recovery. Your therapeutic courts are amazing. They work. I've seen the clients. I've talked to clients who've gone through your recovery court, Swift and Sure, the Veterans Court. When you think about a veteran, especially, who has served our country and given their life for us, and then something happens, right? Something happens in their life, whether it's a traumatic brain injury or post-traumatic stress, and they start to self-medicate with some illegal narcotics. That shouldn't be a crime, right? Let's get that veteran on the path to recovery. Let's help that person who's helped us so they can be a wonderful father or mother or child to their family, because those things work. And you're doing a great job in Muskegon. That was another reason I came here. I saw the therapeutic courts that you had here. I saw what the public defender was doing and their mission in the office to represent the whole person.
Can you describe for our audience, I want to, maybe in general terms, when a person is charged, so at the very beginning of the process, right? And the various levels of service that the public defender's office offers from start to finish. Walk us through what that looks like.
Right. So if someone, several of our clients are arrested on the street by law enforcement, and then they're taken to the jail in Muskegon County. This is something I learned. You only have the one jail here, but it's quite a big county. It's spread out. So several different law enforcement agencies arrest our clients all over Muskegon County. They're brought to the jail. And that next day, usually, if it's a Friday, we will meet them on Monday. But if it's Monday, they get arrested, we'll usually meet them on Tuesday, and my lawyers talk to them. I also have interns who are either in law school or undergraduate who help with these interviews. And we ask them questions to get to the root of, who they are, where they live, who their family is, who's dependent on them. What can I tell the judge about them so that the judge can feel secure in releasing my client back to the community safely, so that there's less risk of reoffending and we can get them on a path? So at that time, we do a screening. And the screening is, and we offer them services. And we ask clients, are you a veteran? Do you have a mental health? Have you ever been hospitalized for any type of mental health issue? Do you have a substance abuse issue? Some clients are open. It's hard. They're meeting us for the first time. I tell young lawyers, and quite frankly, all lawyers, you should not expect someone to trust you immediately. Would you trust someone else immediately? You never met them before just because you're a lawyer? No, you have to gain that trust. So you start building that relationship with the clients, gaining the trust, and that's the first interview. Then about 3 days later, we do a second interview. And that's a different lawyer who talks to them and gets to the root, maybe talking a little bit more about the charge, right? The clients are either released back into the community, or if they're already not in custody when we first meet them, we make sure that they know when their court dates are. We make sure we tell them about their charge, about what's the next step. I always said this for years and years, because I've been in management now in a public defender role for the early 2000s. I always say clients do better, right, if everybody does their job correctly and follows the law. It starts with law enforcement, right? They're on the street. Then it comes to us, the defense attorney usually. Then it's the judge. If the judge follows the law, if the prosecutor is reasonable, not overzealous, if the defense attorney is competent, I don't care who you are. If you have to go to prison or you get probation, I have talked to clients about this. When they come home, they do better. They just deserve a fair shake. That's what every client who comes into the system deserves. It's the clients who, don't feel they got a fair shake, or their lawyer didn't talk to them, their lawyer didn't tell them everything, and have constant communication and build that trust. If you're going to be an attorney who works in a system, a criminal system, your whole job is to represent a client. You don't have work if you don't have a client. I try to remind people that. And when I come to work, and I tell the lawyers this every day and all the staff, you come to work and you think, if I was the client, what would I expect from my public defender? What would I want in my case? Would I want one lawyer on my case or two? Most likely two, second set eyes. Would I want a social worker to interview me and help me with my problems that got me here? Definitely. Would I want an investigator to investigate my case, go take some pictures, interview witnesses? Of course. So that's what I try to remind people. Think about if you're the client. Step in their shoes and do the best you can with the facts and the law that you have.
Yeah, and I think, again, why I was a huge a fan of creating an in-house public defender's office is because before it was on a contract basis, and not to say that they weren't good lawyers.
Right.
But, priorities are different, right? When you're kind of half-time public defender, half-time, your own working for your retained clients versus, as you've described, hey, every day I'm walking in, I'm thinking about, okay, these are the people that I have to meet with today. These are the people I'm representing today. And how am I going to best do my job? And I couldn't agree with you more. The idea of communication is huge.
It's the biggest part of being a lawyer, quite frankly, when you have a client, when you're not sitting in a desk just writing contracts. If you don't have we have face-to-face with real people every day. And the greatest thing about having a public defender office is that you have support. You have your colleagues to bounce ideas off of. You have support staff who are helping you write motions or answering phones or dealing with the public. You have an investigator who you're talking to constantly and going through strategy about how am I going to represent this client? What's the best strategy? What's my defense theory? When you are a solo practitioner, my husband is a solo practitioner, and running the business is very difficult. You're thinking about the money. You're thinking about how to keep the lights on, how to pay your administrative assistant. So those do take you away from concentrating on the case. So the staff in my office don't have to worry about that, right? I have to worry about that. That's my job to worry about the budget and keeping the lights on and getting the staff necessary so we can have two lawyers working on the more serious cases together. We can do lunch and learns, which we have, where we have lawyers come and bring a case to talk to more experienced lawyers in the office, say, hey, this is my case. What does everybody suggest I do? What should I file a motion? The prosecutor has made me an offer. Should I take the offer? Are there other options here in this case? When you're a young lawyer, I can't imagine being out on my own if I was a young lawyer. I wouldn't have known what to do. I wouldn't have been representing my clients effectively and to the best of my ability. You can't work in a silo. Even our attorneys that we do contract with, which have been wonderful, we give them our resources too. We give them an investigator if we need it. We are there to, service them, help them get expert witnesses, whatever they need, so they can also represent their clients to the best of their ability.
Let's talk a little bit. You mentioned, which is sort of similar to my path, you started your legal career as an intern. And certainly, historically, in the public defender's office, interns have played not only a vital role in the day-to-day operations, but creating that learning experience, that environment that, allows people to experience what it's like, without necessarily having invested a lot of time and energy into it. How important, since you've been here, have you seen that internship role, both, I know, on the lawyer side and on the social work side? How important has that been?
It's really beyond important. And I thank Fred Johnson, who I took over for him as the director. He started the intern program here. And the lawyers could not work without interns. The social workers could not work without interns. Quite frankly, I could not staff my office without interns because interns come to us thinking, maybe do I want to do this? What am I going to learn? Not only do they obviously meet with clients and have a wonderful experience being in the courthouse, watching trials, watching your staff, DJ, my staff, listening to probation officers, listening to the judges, seeing how courts work. Then they're not so afraid anymore, and they learn the system. They're like, oh, well, maybe I will, undergraduates especially, well, maybe I should go to law school, and some of them do go to law school. And then they come back to us and intern in the office. All the interns who come to us, I say, we're here for you. You're here to help us, but we're here to make your experience the most valuable it can be. And I always suggest the interns go intern somewhere else. I suggest go intern at the prosecutor's office. See if that's what your niche is. Go intern at a private law firm. Maybe you want to do some sort of corporate work. You really don't know as a lawyer what you want to do until you intern. So for law students, it's crucial. The undergraduates, though, are there were a lot of undergraduate interns here in Muskegon. We didn't have so many in Cook County once in a while, but I think the undergraduate program, and mostly it's from Grand Valley State, we are getting some graduate students for social work from Hope College and also from Grand Valley to work with our social work team. They're amazing. I'm hoping that one of the interns that I currently have, I will be able to soon hire full-time. But, again, that depends on budget and everything like that. So they're a vital part of the public defender's office. I know you have interns, DJ. We're here to make new lawyers, right? Better lawyers, and get more people brought into our field that I've loved for, over 30 years as a lawyer.
Let me ask you this question, because you have, unlike myself, you've sort of dabbled both in the private sector and the public sector, and there is a difference between the two. For those folks that are out there that are in the private sector that maybe they're not able to scratch that itch. They're still, and they're not quite sure about the public sector. What are some of the advantages of working in the public sector?
Well, like you said, I've been working for government most of my life. Then I did some nonprofit. I worked with my husband for a little bit. That was interesting. Yeah. And in the private field. And then, but government is wonderful because it's stable. Generally, you have all these other agencies in government that you rely on. It's not just your office, right? The public defender's office interfaces with so many different systems, not just the court system, but the other county systems, right? My clients are getting treatment over at Health West. My clients are going to Veterans Affairs in Muskegon and getting help there. And that communication and that line, the more knowledge we have, the better we can represent clients. And I think that is one thing that's wonderful about government. I hope that some of these government programs stay, especially for young lawyers who have huge bills coming out of law school, that they can get the loan forgiveness program so they're not saddled with debt, those first several years that they're working. I'm hopeful that we will continue on this path in my office, in your office, DJ, to be competitive and be able to give young lawyers a salary that is a living wage where they can actually buy a home here in Muskegon and live here. I have brought some lawyers from out of state already. Unfortunately, one is going to Grand Rapids, but that's okay. That's close by. The other one is, looking for a place in Muskegon to live, and we'll bring new community members here. I think one thing that was great about that I never had in Cook County, we hired some interns this summer, and Baker College, I had hired a girl out of Mississippi, and she's young. She doesn't have any money to live in Muskegon, and we worked with Baker College and the county, right, government, to help us get her a dorm at Baker College. And then my second intern who came to us from out of state also got a dorm at Baker College. So they're here this summer, working for me, able to live here, loving Muskegon. When I try to keep up with staff and people leave, and you and I both have this attrition issue, and then we have to bring new people in, and then we have to train them, it's a lot of investment. I don't care where you work. I don't care what you do as a living, bringing new staff in. And that investment pays off, but it takes a long time. So we just need to make sure that we sell Muskegon too. And I've been doing that. I'm a young Muskegonite, I guess you would call me. I've been here a year. Love it. Love everything about it, even though I am familiar with Michigan, like I said, from a young age. But selling Muskegon is a big part of it. And I think it's a wonderful, vibrant community. I love it. I can't imagine why people wouldn't want to live here, but some people want to live in a bigger city or, like I said, Grand Rapids, but it's so close. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, Muskegon is it's a little gem.
Yes,
that's
a little
really
gem.
starting to shine, which is fantastic. So it's getting easier and easier to sell Muskegon than it was in years past, for sure. So I'm sure you've heard this term before, so I want you to dispel this perception.
Okay.
And because it always makes me cringe when I heard it. And I don't hear it that much anymore, but oftentimes folks who find out that they're going to be represented by a public defender say, "Well, but I want a real lawyer."
Absolutely.
and it's unfortunate that perception is out there because the members of your staff and the public defenders I've worked with in the past are all exceptional lawyers. They have law degrees. If you go to their office, it's probably hanging on their wall.
It is.
So can you help let people understand that this isn't fly-by-night stuff, that these are real lawyers doing real legal work?
Well, just obviously ditto what you just said. Every lawyer in my office went to law school, went to 4 years of college, university, and then 3 years of law school, and had to take an exam at the end of law school. First of all, I had to graduate from law school and then take an exam called the bar exam and pass that exam. And they also had to pass what's called character and fitness. All states require that every lawyer who is admitted into the bar is of good moral character. And people forget that's very important as a lawyer. You know, you have confidences to keep. You have to build relationships, trust, respect. Those are all part of having good moral character. So they're just like any other lawyer who is paid or works in a fancy office or even in a small town and hangs their shingle. My lawyers are lawyers who have all passed the bar and have different levels of experience. So there is that younger lawyer, the lawyer who's been a lawyer for 10 years, lawyer who's been 20 years. That's one thing that public defenders always have to sort of dispel with their clients and their clients' families, that I'm here for you. I know you're not paying me. I'm free. People think when they get things that are free, they're not as good, right? But that's not true in the law business, right? They're free because the government is paying me. You know, you don't need to pay me. The government is paying me. And I'm getting an excellent salary, and I'm getting excellent training, and I have excellent colleagues who are going to help me do my job and be the best lawyer I can be for your son or daughter or yourself. So it's just hard because you get this also, there's this image of public defenders that we work with the state, with you, DJ,
right.
that we're talking to you in court. We have to be very aware of that. When a public defender and a prosecutor are talking in court, which is absolutely necessary every single day, all day, so you got to be aware that your clients are watching you. And I remember I had a supervisor once who said, you know, you got to, when you're laughing with the prosecutor, you're joking with the judge, sometimes clients might perceive that wrongly. And you have to go back to your client and say, hey, I have to work with I'm working with the prosecutor. Don't think that I'm not here for you and you alone. But obviously, I work with the prosecutor every day. We have to get along. We have to work together. That doesn't mean I'm not 100% loyal to you. So again, it goes back to thinking about the client and what is the client perceiving when he or she sees you laughing in the courtroom with the prosecutor. They're thinking, oh, you work for the state. You're working with the state. You're not working on my behalf. It's just absolutely not true. But again, that's that communication with your client. You have to dispel that fear. And you have to realize, the last thing I'll say about sort of community and fears about public defenders and just court in general, there's something called procedural justice. And we started talking about it in Cook County a long time ago. When people go to a courthouse, it is very intimidating. It is scary. It is not a place people want to go, ever, quite frankly. And those of us who work in the courthouse day in and day out have no problem. We're very used to it. We have to realize that people coming in there are afraid. The community is scared. They don't know what's going to happen to them. They don't know where to go. They don't know who the judge is. Quite frankly, they haven't even met a lawyer yet, maybe. Or maybe they're trying to do something on their own. You call that pro forma here? Pro se. Pro se, yeah, we call that pro se in Cook. I thought maybe it was called something else. Representing themselves, just trying to get answers. So I ask everyone who works in the courthouse to remember that. And when someone comes up to the window at the clerk's office or comes to, we have an office now over there, or knocks on the door and wants to talk to you, you have to remember that you need to communicate what is going to happen in that case. And take 5 minutes. Sit down with that person, talk to them, dispel their fears, help them be a little more comfortable in a courthouse. We're never going to take away all of the fear. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen in a courthouse that are scary and that are, very sad. And so, but you can make it a little easier for the family and the witnesses and people who've been harmed by crime. We just can. I think that's on all our duty as people who work in the courthouse to think about procedural justice. And that's what I think that means and what we need to do. And we can always do better.
Well, thank you for dispelling that perception, because it makes me cringe every time I hear it, only because, you and I both know what it takes to be a lawyer.
Yes.
And it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And folks that decide to work in public service, like the Public Defender's Office, are doing it because they believe in the mission and the vision and want to do what's best.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really important for folks watching this to understand how important that really is.
It is. It is the whole reason for being. Raison d'être, if you would say in French. Why don't be a public defender if we don't really want to be that person that can work with clients and get to the bottom of why they're here and really have that. Those conversations are hard. It is not easy to build relationships with clients. Clients come from all walks of life, but you have to understand where they are and take them where they are, start where they're at, understand they come from a different area than you. I blame the system, but I blame everybody who worked in the system in the 80s and 90s and 2000s when, we locked everybody up, right? We thought that was the answer. You had a small amount of drugs on you, you were going to jail, and then you were getting probation, and then you were going to prison, and then you were coming home from prison. And if you got another amount of drugs on you, you were going back to prison. And that didn't solve it, right? We still had horrible crime on the streets. It wasn't the answer. It's never going to be the answer. The answer is a multifaceted approach to individuals, human beings, and everybody needs to be treated as a human being from the get-go, from when they're arrested by law enforcement, to then meeting their lawyer, to then dealing with the prosecutor, dealing with the judge, and dealing with other services after if you're convicted or if you go home. Because think of it from the point of view of someone who didn't commit a crime, right? The public defender is here as the check and balance, right? I always think of us, we're the check and balance on everybody else in the system. I'm here to check you, DJ. I'm here to check the judges, make sure they understand the law. And I am here to check on law enforcement. If they have violated some constitutional right on the street, I'm here to make sure I bring that issue to court. And with clients, like I said before, if they trust the system, we're all part of that trust. If any one of us messes that up, and treats someone unfairly, then those people don't trust our system. They don't trust the criminal system or the judicial system, the justice system. And that's on us. That's on all of us together to make sure that the community trusts us. And whether it doesn't matter if you've been harmed by a crime, if you've been arrested for a crime, if you're a family member, you're trying to get your children back, right? You're a young child who's misbehaving in school and then ends up our way. We have to treat people the way that we would want to be treated, and we have to do our jobs well. We have to follow the law. And all of us have to follow the law, everybody who works in this system. So my job, and your job, DJ, obviously, is to bring in great lawyers who are trained. We have to train them. We have to make sure that we keep them well, right? I just hired a recruitment specialist, but she's helping me with wellness, make sure all my staff are feeling good, because if you're not feeling good in the morning and you come to work, you're not going to do a good job. Maybe you need a vacation. You need a mental health break. You need to go and do something with your family or your friends and get out and sort of put this behind you. As you know, being a criminal lawyer in the field is very taxing. We see a lot of bad things. It's hard to erase some of those things. Not as bad, I would say, obviously, as law enforcement who's firsthand, or maybe yourself, DJ, if you ever go to a crime scene and see those things. But public defenders see pictures. We read horrible documents. We hear about horrible things happening. And you need a break. You need to stay well to do this job. And sometimes you need to walk away. I walked away for 5 years. I was on my career. I was at the height of my career doing serious homicide cases and death penalty cases. And I couldn't do it anymore. Attorneys, and people don't know this, attorneys have a very high suicide rate. One of the highest. They have a high rate of alcohol abuse and substance abuse because of what we see. So we have to realize that as lawyers and take care of those issues and don't let them get out of control. And that's on you and me, DJ, running our offices, keeping our eye on our staff, making sure that they're, that they can have a break.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think people don't. It's hard to describe being a trial lawyer to somebody who's not a trial lawyer.
Definitely.
And it's hard to describe the various ebbs and flows and the feelings and all that goes along with it. From the anxiety to the stress. Nobody understands it unless you actually do it.
For sure. I always say this to women. It's obviously the world has changed. Men stay home with kids now. It's much different. But women have always been the ones to take care of children in the past. And I left because I literally did not see my 2-year-old child for almost 2 years. I was on trial every day. I was working till 10 at night. I was at the jail every weekend. We had too many cases, right? But I had to keep up. So the person who suffered was my child. And I said, okay, I have to choose. And of course I chose my family. And it was nice to be home for those 5 years and stay home and have a third child at that time. But I still knew I wanted to use my talent. I wanted to get back in, and it was a good time, and I was able to make that work. But when you think about single parents out there who we meet every day in our business, who are trying to make things work, do a job, raise kids, be home when the children come home from school, it's hard. And all of that plays into a part. I don't care if you're a lawyer or business person or entrepreneur, personal life affects your work life. And we have to realize that and help people make good decisions, whether it's to stay working, leave work, take time off, whatever that is, so they can be the best they can be as a family member, as a parent, or as a lawyer, whatever they're doing.
Now, I know that the public defender's office, and this was true when Fred was there and certainly continues with you, and does participate in outside activities, community events. There's one in particular that you want to make sure that we mention here today. Which one? What do you want to talk about?
Right. So we're sponsoring with several other organizations an expungement clinic. It's going to be on July 12th from noon to 4 p.m. over at the Community Center at 95 West Broadway Avenue in Muskegon Heights. So we're trying to get people to pre-register. So if you have criminal convictions, there's going to be a lot of people on site. Several lawyers from my office will be there talking to you about your possible convictions and trying to get that off your record, right? Get rid of that scarlet letter on your back so you can get a job, you can be, help support your family, or go to school, do whatever you need to do. But we want to help you, if possible, get those criminal convictions off your back. So I would ask you to call the community center. It's at the corner of Jefferson and Broadway. There is I don't have the website with me now, but it is being sponsored by Safe and Just Michigan. That's the state agency that goes around the state and sets up these expungement clinics. So we're going to have our lawyers there helping you. We'll probably have some interns there helping you. Just show up. But if you can pre-register, that way the clerk's office is going to be there and help pull your files, pull your criminal history, so we can get you on a possible path to, what did we used to call it? Like, not punishment-free, but, something like that. We used to call that in Cook County. Get rid of that old punishment. You served your time. You did what you were supposed to do that the government asked you to do. Now you should be able to get on the path to be a productive citizen.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm appreciative, and unfortunately it's taken a long time, is the state of Michigan has expanded its expungement law. Before quite frankly, it was ridiculous. I don't even know why they called it expungement, because it was minor misdemeanors, and you couldn't have. The parameters were so tight that it only affected a select few. I tend to agree with this idea that once you have served your time, that's enough. Because for me, the best crime prevention is creating productive citizens.
Absolutely. We're on the exact same page.
That's
the only way.
Yeah.
And, DJ, it doesn't start with you and me, right? It starts in schools, in our foster care system, all these others, healthcare systems, medical care. There's all these systems, I say, that have touched my clients before they came to me. And people have failed. Those systems have failed them. And sometimes they failed themselves, the clients, obviously. They haven't done what they were supposed to do in school, or they haven't listened to their parents, or they haven't, followed along with it, whatever a treatment was. But the systems need to do better. We all can do better. We can only do what we can with the limited resources we all have. But we can try harder. In this system, I think more than any other system in the world, the criminal system, we really have to try really hard because all of us are in this together. None of us want crime. None of us want to be victims of crime. I've been a victim of crime. My daughter's been a victim of crime. And, it harms you and the trauma that crime can cause, not only for, like I say, the person who's been harmed, but for sometimes the people who do the harming. And DJ, you and I have talked about restorative justice. I think that's a program that we could, there is some restorative justice office here in Muskegon, but maybe looking at these cases, sitting people across from each other. Because if you're harmed by a crime, a lot of times you want to know why. Why did this person harm me? What happened? Why did this happen? And that answer rarely happens in the criminal system. Though the persons who are harmed by crime rarely get an answer to that question. And sometimes there's closure by locking the person away, but lots of times there isn't. And there are better ways. So another thing we can look forward to doing in the future, more restorative justice, sitting the person who's been harmed down with the person who did the harming, work out a contract, talk about it. People who are harmed by a crime kind of want to know who the person was who did the crime. They've been doing it in Ireland for years, on serious cases for years and years and years. Australia, I've heard a lead prosecutor came to Chicago. She was amazing. She started a restorative justice program in Ireland and has traveled all across the world talking about how it works. They've been doing it, obviously, Native Americans have been doing restorative justice in their peace circles for years. That's how they solve problems. We don't always have to put people away in jail, right? Or lock them up to solve the problem. So another thing we can look forward to maybe talking about in the future, DJ.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So just so that we mention it again, July 12th.
Noon to 4 at 95 West Broadway. You can show up. If you go on to, you can absolutely email me at my email, which is my last name, Campanelli, hard to spell, CAMPANELLIAM, for the first two letters, at co.muskegon.mi.us. You can email me and I'll send you the flyer. So you can, because there's a link right on the flyer that you can pre-register for. There really isn't a website. So again, it's CampanelliAM at co.muskegon.mi.us. And if you are out there and you want to get your case expunged, you email me and I'll get you the information you need to get to this clinic.
Well, thank you, Amy, for being here today.
Thank you. This has been great.
I really appreciate you being able to really kind of open the door, if you will, to the Public Defender's Office so that the folks watching this really get an understanding of what that office does, who's involved in that, and the processes and certainly your philosophies too that obviously permeate throughout the staff in your office. So thank you for being with me today.
Well, thank you, DJ. It's been great.
Excellent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this wraps up another episode of Muskegon County Municipalities at Work. Today, we got to dive deep into the Public Defender's Office. As always, continue to watch these and learn about municipal government, county government here in Muskegon County. It's really important that we all understand the various levels of government that are at work for you every day, but more importantly, the people that make it work. Thank you again. And again, this program doesn't happen without the ingenuity of one Mr. Mike Fogus.